I know everybody is busy and tired, and we just came off of Thanksgiving, and I just did a 600-mile trip myself, and it's just important sometimes to reach back and to reach back for your community. And I'm guessing that most of y'all are here because you've had a bad experience with a rezoning in your area. How many people have had a bad experience with a rezoning in their area? That's how I got involved with this a little over 20 years ago when they built the Lowe's next door to the church. We didn't oppose the Lowe's because it was a commercial business and a commercial corridor, but we did oppose the reduction in buffers. They wanted to take the tree line from 75 feet between our neighborhood and the store to 25 feet. And so we opposed that, but unfortunately, the Baptist church owned the property, and the developer offered to repave their parking lot if they would sign an agreement to support the buffer reduction, which they did, and then the developer did a very poor job of paving their parking lot. So they even shafted the church as well as our neighborhood. During that process, they silted in our lake, and we picketed the store for 10.5 months. And that was my intro to zoning and my educational process. After that, we fought against the commissioner who had sanctioned everything that was done next door, and backed a homeowner advocate commission candidate, and he got elected and appointed me to the planning commission. Well, he appointed me 3 years, and the third year, he had a zoning that was going to personally benefit him, and I voted against it. And he said, well, you need to resign because you've lost your objectivity. And I said, well, what could be more objective than voting against the man that has appointed me? And he said, well, if you don't resign, we'll change the bylaws and fire you. And I said, well, you can change the bylaws, but you can't apply them retroactively, which they did anyway. So I filed a suit against the county and got my planning commission job back in 6 weeks for the remainder of that term. Naturally, I did not get reappointed by him again, but in those 3 years, I gained a lot of knowledge on the process itself. And the developers have lawyers generally, that zoning attorneys that represent them in their interest. And it's up to homeowners to represent their own interest, and we're not professional zoning people, but we can be. It's not rocket science. It's a straightforward process and formula. And that's what I want to help you do, know where to get the information and have it at your fingertips. We are so lucky in Gwinnett because we have a very extensive, accurate, interactive website. The information is at your fingertips. And I suggest that you go on the GwinnettCounty.com website and familiarize yourself with the important documents that they use for the framework of the zoning process, like the Unified Development Ordinance, they call the UDO, or the 2040 Unified Plan, which they call the Comprehensive Plan or the Comp Plan, and then the 2020 Land Use Map. Those are the documents that are used as the framework for the zoning process. You need to be proactive. So the important things are to be proactive, and to be proactive and give yourself more time, you want to either appoint somebody in your neighborhood or be that person in your neighborhood who routinely monitors applications as they are submitted to the county. And you can go on the site, and it tells you in here how to find it. And you can search them. They're all listed by address. And when you recognize address as being in your neighborhood, then you can download the application package. And it'll have a very small site plan in it and the gist of what they want to put in your neighborhood. And at that point, the thing I advise you to do is to print a copy of the site plan that is large enough to read the details on. Developers have a 24 by 36 inch site plan. it's worth it to spend the money and get one yourself. It just makes it easier to dissect the plan, see the measurements for the buffers, for their common space, all the details are just impossible to read on an 8.5 by 11 size piece of paper, particularly when you've gotten to the point where you can't see anything without these. That way you can look at the strengths and the weaknesses of the plan. Then you do the math on their plan. You want to check their calculations for density, green space, common space, buffers, because they fudge these numbers. It happens a lot, doesn't it? And if the site plan is the size of this piece of paper, it goes right over everybody's head. It is impossible to recreate any map from this size site plan. After that, you can formulate a list of concerns for denial or conditions to shape it to make it into a better development. Robert Frost said that good fences make good neighbors, and I say bigger buffers make better neighbors. At this point, most all of the vacant land in Gwinnett is still vacant because it has some kind of developmental difficulties like streams, wetlands, or sharp drops in elevation that make it prohibitively expensive to develop. That's why it's been sitting out there for a while, because they got the low-lying fruit first. And the ones that are more expensive, that they make less money on, are the ones that still have trees on them as a general rule, or pieces of property that have been in people's families for years and years. After you look at your site plan, you want to highlight the flaws in the plan and your environmental concerns, like a dam breach zone. That was one of the big concerns about the townhome project on Five Forks that we fought at the beginning of the end of August, the beginning of September. By the time the yellow signs are posted, you only have 2 weeks before the Planning Commission hearing. So writing heard on applications received gives you a leg up in the process, because 2 weeks is not much time to mount an effort. The cases are first heard by the Municipal Planning Commission, and they routinely meet the first and third Tuesdays of the month. They may add a Wednesday meeting for a total of 3 in 1 month when they have a busy schedule with an unusually large number of cases. The posting of the zoning signs usually correlates with the posting of the agenda package on the county website, and that package can be found with the Planning Commission public hearing schedule. Now, in that package, the Planning Department staff analysis will be included, and there are paid planners at the county, and they critique the application on its merit or lack thereof. So you can go to GwinnettCounty.com, click on departments, then you choose planning and development, then you click on land use planning, and then there'll be a blue bar labeled notices, agendas, and meetings. This information is excellent for you to use in your argument, because these are planning professionals. They went to school for this. They know what they're doing. The staff will point to and cite the 2040 Unified Plan, the Unified Development Ordinance, and the 2030 Comp Plan. And approximately $1 million of our tax funds are used every time they redo those 3 things. So we want to utilize the information we paid $1 million for, and use that in your argument, because why do we spend $1 million if we're going to ignore the data that's in it? They also use the standards governing zoning to evaluate the case, and you should use those standards for zoning, standards governing zoning also. Generally, the way the applicant answers those questions concerning the standards governing zoning and the way the planning department answers them are on the opposite end of the spectrum. The applicant will say that it's all good, it will have no adverse impact on the community, but when the planners look at it, they'll go, no, we can expect adverse impacts from these. So you'll want to read that, and then you start emailing your planning commissioners the week prior to the public hearing. You want to write to all 9 of them because they all have a vote. Use the zoning case number in the subject line, and you be respectful. They're our friends, not our enemies. They're our advocates. They're not our adversaries. You want to thank them for their time and commitment to our county, and because basically it's a thankless job that pays very little. The planning commissioners get paid $150 a meeting, and the county is over 400 square miles. So just what you spend in gas to ride around and do community meetings and look at your properties, and the time it takes to meet with communities, and then to do the public hearing process, it's almost like a negative. It's a tax, my husband used to say it was a tax write-off for me. There's a chance that the applicant may reach out to you and request a meeting if a lot of people had been contacting their commissioners. I encourage y'all all to meet with the developer if they throw out an invitation, because it goes well for you in the process at the planning commission or the board of commissioners if you have come to the table and tried to find some common ground. Many times they'll make concessions. They generally ask for the moon, expecting to have to shave some stuff off on the way to the approval process. They'll barter with you for changes in exchange for your support. Sometimes there's some common ground. You can make it into something that is a win-win for both of you. You can increase the buffers between your neighborhood and the zoning. But it still goes in your favor to try and work with the applicant. Sometimes you just reach an impasse. It happened to me in a zoning just recently. After that, you want to reach out to the others around you, and you want to encourage them to write the commissioners and to attend the public hearing. Use Facebook, Nextdoor, and your HOA if you have one to get your message out to as many people as possible. Both the applicant and the opposition will have 10 minutes in their presentation at the public hearing process. It's really important for homeowners to coordinate together and decide who's going to speak at the microphone and try to cover different things so that you're not repeating yourselves and wasting that precious little bit of 10 minutes that you have, because it goes very quickly. It's amazing how quickly it goes. People within 1,000 feet of the subject property will receive a written notice prior to the zoning with the application package included. And those homeowners who receive that notification and the homeowners whose property abuts the subject property are the only ones that have legal standing should it be approved and adversely affect the value of their property. So we try and give deference to the people who abut the subject property because it affects them more than anybody. Try to practice your statements with a timer so that you know how much time it's going to take. You just can't even imagine how quickly the 10 minutes goes. You want to use photos and visual traffic examples in your presentation, and a good picture is worth 1,000 words. It can save you a lot of time at the microphone. If you use visuals, you want to ask someone to assist you in displaying them in front of the podium for the overhead projector. And that will also help you save time for your speech if someone else is making the picture thing happen. You want to research the applicant's history. You want to check out the quality of their other developments. If they're requesting to relocate their current business near you, it's a good idea to go and look at what their current business looks like. Because you can imagine, if it looks like that where they are, it's going to look like that when they get over to you too. Junky property will have junky property no matter where they move. Take photos of their existing location or their developments for your presentation and highlight their historical flaws and shortcomings. it's particularly useful in applications for special use permits, for like auto repair and used car lots. They move frequently for bigger locations or they lose their lease. And those are inherently junky properties. They're generally undersized for their business, and they'll have broken down cars and busted windshields and hoods up out in the parking lot. And that's really not what you want to look at when you're driving through your community. Unfortunately, policing for code compliance on those issues falls on the citizens most of the time, because Gwinnett County doesn't have enough code compliance officers. They don't have enough inspectors. They're woefully understaffed. HOAs and groups like Mountain Park Community Association can help out in those instances. Like we have talked about banding together and having code compliance come through and do a sweep. And that way you don't have to make your own complaint. You can make a complaint under an umbrella organization that becomes like anonymous, because these people are your neighbors, and when you make a complaint, it does become a matter of public record, and maybe you just don't want them to know that you're the one that dropped a dime on them. Some folks will come to the public hearing wearing red, and that denotes opposition as a general rule. But if all the opposition is wearing red, it's impossible for the commissioners to discern which zoning you're there to oppose. That can work in your favor. You can also ask other opposition to raise their hand in support of you when your case is heard. So it looks like you have a larger group than you have, and it's impossible for the commissioners to know which zoning you're there for. And it's all happening in your county. It's our county, and quality development helps the whole county. So we are all in this together. After the meeting gets started, the chairwoman will ask if there's any opposition for the case, and at that point you raise your hand or you stand, and I suggest that you stand. It has a stronger impact. Each of the 4 county commissioners and the chairwoman appoint planning commissioners. Each county commissioner appoints 2, the chairwoman appoints 1, for a total of 9 planning commissioners. So when you email the commissioners, email all of them, because they all vote. And when you write to them, I ask that you be respectful to them and non-threatening. As a planning commissioner, I received emails from homeowners sometimes threatening not to vote for me if I approved that zoning. And I wasn't elected, I was appointed. And they also do that with the Board of Commissioners as well. So remember that our commissioners are homeowners just like us, and many of them started out as their HOA president, like our Commissioner Ben Koo started out as his HOA president. Recently, when we bought the townhomes at 5 Old Stricklin, Chairwoman Hendrickson had to recuse herself, or she chose to recuse herself, because she had received the 1,000-foot notification letter because her property was within shouting distance of the subject property. Chairwoman Hendrickson recused herself because she had gotten the notification letter, and that just shows you how close our chairwoman lives to us. I had no idea that, did you know she lived that close to you, to Old Maryland?
No.
Having been involved in zoning battles for over 20 years, I can tell you that the homeowners have never had a better place at the table than they have with the current Planning Commission and the Board of Commissioners. The Highway 78 corridor is one of the first densely developed areas of the county, and back then all development was considered good development. We have years of bad zoning and development to attempt to retrofit. So every zoning application that comes along, every time you see a yellow sign, doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. It could be good, because you can improve upon what was there to begin with, or improve upon the conditions over what is next door. And the groundwork that Cape Pittman and the Mountain Park Community Association have laid is very important. We need energetic and dedicated people to continue this momentum. They say that you get the government you deserve. Well, the same thing can be said of your community. What kind of community do you want? Are you willing to be a contributor for positive change in your area? Margaret Mead said, "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has." And I say to change the world, start with your county. Think global, act local. So I'm sure you all have some questions or some experience that you'd like to share. We've got a microphone right there that you can step up if you have a question.
You mentioned emailing each of the planning commissioners separately, all 9 of them.
Yes.
Do you suggest sending an email to yourself and blind copying each of those 9 or 9 separate emails?
I've done it both ways. If you do separate emails, then you have to change the names each time. If you do the group email, you just say, "Dear Commissioner," you might want to separate Chairwoman Hendrickson out because she's not necessarily a commissioner. She is the chairperson, chairwoman. And she's very responsive. I can tell you that I write these guys all the time. She writes back. She and Ben Koo write back. Rarely do I get a response from any of the other county commissioners, and Commissioner Carden from District 1 even has his own spokesperson. So you would think if that was your job, that you could at least respond to those email requests. I also would suggest that you be brief in your emails to these people, because if you want them to read the whole message, keep it short and simple. They're getting a lot of stuff. If you got a really hot zoning, they'll get dozens. If you got a big zoning, they might get over 100. They scan them. So make your key points and then thank them. Thank them for their service to the county. It's just, I can't tell you the tone of disrespect that gets put into these letters when you're asking people to do something for you. Think about that and be complimentary and conciliatory and maybe even mention that this is in their neighborhood. Once I found out that it was in Chairwoman Hendrickson's neighborhood, I pointed it out to her. A lot of times they will take a case, hear it, and then table the vote until a later meeting. After the public hearing is closed, they'll take deliberation and continue to work on a site plan and vote on it, perhaps at the following 2 o'clock business meeting on the first Tuesday of the next month. When they do that, the public hearing is closed, but you can still email them, you can still lobby them, you can still plead your case. It's a great way to have extra time at that 10-minute mark. If they table the vote, you've got more than the 10 minutes. You've got another time to come back in and really make your case. And do your homework on your case. Use law, use zoning law. Don't use emotion. Use the facts, the 2040 plan, the land use map, the UDO. Use the things the paid planners use in concise bullet points. Most people want to talk about schools. They get all emotional. This is going to put so many kids in the Parkview cluster or the Shiloh cluster. Well, school overcrowding cannot be the sole reason for denying a rezoning. Yes, ma'am.
That was going to be one of my questions. One of the most frustrating things I've encountered through all of this is, well, we can't use traffic studies or school crowding or yada yada in land use decisions, but in the future, going forward, Now, is there some kind of legislation or ordinance change that can be done through Gwinnett leadership, or would that have to go through the Golden Dome? Because that, I mean, I understand, you know, those can't be used for land use decisions, but it affects the quality of life of people.
Yes.
Now, granted, I'm a renter. I live in apartments, but I care. Everybody is not me. I'm just gonna put it out there. So, but I just want everybody to have a great quality of life, regardless of whether you rent, own, whatever.
Well, those are good points. In 1985, a state rep from Decatur, from DeKalb County, Kathy Steinberg, passed legislation called the Steinberg Act. And in it, it has the standards governing zoning that they use still today. At that point, they were being hammered by the Home Builders Association. The National Home Builders Association had a huge lobby effort. And there were lawsuits back and forth. Mr. Penn has been involved in this longer than I have. You may want to speak to that. Come on. Yeah, I know you know. He was involved with the Tucker Community Association for the last 20 years.
Yeah.
I know he has done yeoman's work on this.
All right, the law says that the reason you don't do schools and you can't consider traffic is because the county has a separate independent department that handles that. In other words, zoning's not in charge of building roads, so therefore traffic by itself cannot be a sole reason. It can be one of many. Same thing as school, it can be one of many. Now, I'll say this. When you say traffic and traffic studies, we're merely talking about volumes of cars. If you see something on the site plan, and for me, I also studied the DOT driveway manuals and the safety manuals and the design manuals. If there's something in that site plan that creates something unsafe, then it is germane to that zoning. The traffic only deals with the volume of cars itself that may or may not be created.
Unsafe such as what?
If you don't have an adequate right-hand turn lane or an XL-decel lane, DOT standards say if you have more than 150 cars coming into your property every day, you have to put in a turn lane, right-hand turn lane. If you have more than 250, you have to have a center turn lane. All right, that's pretty standard, and that's standard design. It's American Standard Highway and Traffic Engineering Standards. Different things you look for, but you know, when she says traffic, don't everyone just say, no, it's out the door. No, it's only volume of traffic they're talking about.
And I tried to use traffic for the townhome rezoning when they, next to Lowe's, that was going to have an entrance onto Puckett the first time it came up. And they would have fed into the light there between the Chick-fil-A and the Quick Trip. How many of us have been in that turn lane?
Trying to get
How long were you in that turn lane? Could you get in that turn lane out of either one of those parking lots? At certain times of the day, it's just a gridlock situation. So then they closed off the entrance onto Puckett, and they came back with another proposal where everybody would come out of the Lowe's parking lot. Well, if you're making a right-hand turn, that's fine, but if you're not, that puts you into this light beside us. Or if they're smart, they know that you can go around the church and bypass two lights to Lake Lucerne. And so then all those cars would flow through my neighborhood. So we tried to use traffic to have that one denied, and Commissioner Howard, it fell on deaf ears. That was one of the reasons that she was not reelected for the last term. That and the Oleander rezoning for the 202 homes, those two things pretty much killed her goodwill in this community. So don't just go on traffic and schools, but put together a plethora of those concerns and not single one out, but put together a package of issues for traffic study, traffic safety, school overcrowding. Sometimes it could even be water. It could be sewer. Anything that you can pull out of the county's analysis, and they will say things about the strain on the water usage in the county in that particular area, because there's only so much water coming off of a water main. So the departmental analysis in the zoning package is your best place to go for your ammunition. That and a full-size site plan so that you can do the calculations and see if they are accurately representing the details of the plan. Mr. Penn just helped us pick one apart in Decula. And they have come down from 110 attached units to a plan with 70 detached units in their latest proposal. The homeowners have not met with them yet, but that is huge, huge, to go from 110 attached with no HOA to 70 detached fee simple townhomes. So it's unfortunate that it falls on us to do the legwork and the county's job, but it does fall on us. You do get help from the county, and the website is so helpful, because when we started fighting zonings 20 years ago, we didn't have that. The county didn't have the website they have now. We didn't have the GIS system that we have now. You can get overhead shots of the developments and the surrounding, areas. So we have come a long way, but it's up to us to take it the rest of the way.
Okay.
You had one, so let them go.
I want to piggyback off of what the young lady said here, and I thank her for speaking up, because I live off of East Park, and we got that new huge subdivision going up over there off of the club. So let me be sure I understand you, that there are no state or county laws where they have to look into, for instance, that subdivision is going to affect schools, trash pickup, traffic, noise, water runoff, because we have a detention pond that our property owns, that the county is using to run all of the storm water from the street into it. So so you're telling me that when the county pulls together, or a developer goes in, they don't pull in these departments to see where these areas stand in that particular area?
All of the county agencies are supposed to put their feedback into a zoning application. DOT, stormwater, they all are supposed to make comments and submit them back to planning and development. As far as your detention pond, we have the same thing happening. I live on Lake Lucerne, and it is the regional detention pond for 2,326 acres in this area. So it's against the law for you to put water off on somebody's property, but the county does it to us all the time.
Yeah.
While they charge us a stormwater fee to deal with our stormwater. So right now, we've lowered Lake Lucerne for dock repair and seawall repair, and it makes it abundantly evident to everyone how much of the county's dirt is in our lake. We have a couple of ladies back there who live on one of the creeks that flows behind the Lowe's property, right behind us here, and they just bought that house, and I know they're ill right now because of the amount of sediment that is behind their house. We're about to file a letter of ad litem to the county for inverse condemnation, because they're taking our property without offering to pay us for it, and that's against the law. But the only thing that gets their attention is if you either sue them or threaten to sue them. So that's where our neighborhood is at this point. And we take, like the Lowe's detention pond feeds into a stream that is 0.2 of a mile upstream from our lake. So we are the bottom of everything from the Mountain Park Aquatic Center to the Yellow River. So we are at the regional detention pond.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So given the pervasiveness of social media in society today, and given how long you've been a part of in your role and your tenure, have you seen, or is there a way social media can be used to communicate with the commissioners and the people in an effective way?
Yes, sir, and you're seeing it on the Mountain Park Community Association website. Commissioner Koo is on there all the time. He even put a survey out about those townhomes. I couldn't believe he opened that door. I've never seen a commissioner do that before and ask for so much input after a case was heard. So, I mean, it's pending a vote right now, and he is still soliciting input from his constituency. So, yes, Facebook and Nextdoor have made, they have been game changers for a platform to springboard information, both to receive it and to push it out. Yes, Lisa?
I was just gonna say, as far as the Facebook and the website, he did put out, you know, questions on using Lake Lucerne name, and I replied to it, and you'll see him replying to whatever suggestions you put in there. Now, whether they'll pass or not, or if it'll make a difference, but it is on Facebook through the, what's the website again? I'm on there.
Mountain Park Community Association.
Okay, because I put a thing on there saying I didn't think it should use Lake Lucerne's name. We've got enough Lake Lucerne activity going on this side. We don't need it down there too.
Well,
And then-
we don't want to be associated
Right.
with that.
And
And
then-
it's far enough away from us that it's not Lake Lucerne.
Right,
They originally called that the enclave at Park Haven, and I attacked them using the term enclave in the public hearing, because an enclave is something different than what is around it. It had no buffer around it, so it was the same as the commercial development it was part of. And I said, unless we put a buffer around it, how can you even call it enclave by definition? And I didn't attack the Lucerne name because I wanted to go after bigger things.
I
But
did.
that's the first thing that they did was say, okay, we'll call it something different.
right.
But they can call it whatever they want to call it. It's still a bad plan.
Is
So-
there any updates on the buffer or anything?
We are still asking people to write their commissioners.
Okay, yeah.
We have the time before the December 6th vote to still lobby them. And we are asking for a 40-foot buffer side on the 3 sides facing commercial. There is a lounge that is open until midnight, Monday through Wednesday, and until 2 a.m. Thursday, Friday, and Saturday on one side of the development. And then there's commercial on 2 sides, on other sides. So they definitely need to have some trees. The trees have grown back since they were clear cut in 1998. There's trees that are tall enough to shield the light pollution from second-story windows, and where there are bare spots, we'd like supplemental native plantings that are drought tolerant in clumps to create a true enclave.
Right. Thank you.
Yes?
I was going to make a point about the traffic and safety situation. I don't know how many of you remember, there was a request for a gas station convenience store on the southeast corner of Lake Lucerne and Five Forks Stricklin, probably about 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And there was going to be a lot of use of that by Parkview High School students at the time. And one of the major arguments we made was that students trying to get to the high school in the morning would have to go across the lane of traffic for Lake Lucerne heading, for Five Forks Stricklin heading toward Killian Hill, and also the left turn lane in order to get into the lane they needed in order to get to Cole. The other point of egress was onto Lake Lucerne, and it would have been just about impossible for a number of students to get into a left turn lane there to get onto Five Forks Stricklin.
It came back in another reincarnation as a daycare center. Same issues, getting in and out of there in drive time in the morning, in the afternoon, nightmare.
Exactly.
The best thing they could put there would be like a dentist's office. I mean, some low impact, low traffic thing. Even if you tried to build a few big houses there, it would still be a problem.
Right. Well, we also made the argument too that there's plenty of gas stations
Right.
at Killian Hill and also toward Rockbridge.
And you had another question?
I just had a comment. This was actually somebody else's idea. Now, there's a development about where I live. I'm not gonna call no names or numbers, but I believe they didn't honor what they said they were gonna do a 35-foot buffer. So in the future, is there a way to report that? And the second portion of that question is there a system of progressive discipline in place for repeat offenders?
Those are excellent questions, and the problem is, once they, oops, knock that buffer down, it's gone.
It's gone.
And they did that for an auto sales place right across from the end of my street, and they cut down all the trees between there and Rivercliff, and they even graded up into the slope to give themselves extra parking back there. And by the time I pulled it out into the zoning process as one of the arguments against it, it had already been done. And they did not get that zoning, but they sold the property to somebody else, and they're parking cars in that without a zoning. So you can turn it into code compliance. You can, like I said, unfortunately, it falls on the shoulders of citizens to police code compliance issues, buffers that have been destroyed, and a lot of times they will destroy those buffers on a weekend when there are no county employees on duty. Saturday and Sunday grading, they did that when the Oleander zoning, they went in for their survey with a bulldozer and knocked down all kinds of stuff and silted in neighbor's property. He had a problem, they sent mud down to his pool.
That was right along Garter Creek too.
Yeah, it was. Now, do you live on Oleander?
Who, me?
Yeah.
No, I'm over on the other side of 5 Fork Stricklin from Oleander.
Anybody else? Well, I just want to tell you how much I appreciate that you took the time out of your Tuesday to come here tonight. I know everybody is worn out after Thanksgiving, but your community is important. And if you don't step up, you can't expect anybody else to. So I hope that you'll share the package with your neighbors. If you have an HOA, share it with your HOA. And thank you. I just really appreciate that you came.
Thank you.